Hello, my name is Yudi Namdi, and this is my second blog post for the book entitled Mastery by Robert Greene. And this is my second blog post for the Frederick Douglass Distinguished Scholars Program at American University. Now, the question for this blog post, or the series of questions, are: is social intelligence your strength or weakness? Moreover, the mentor-protege relationship is the most efficient and productive form of learning, and how has your social intelligence impacted your coachability? And the reading was part 3 and part 4, I believe, of Mastery. Now, starting with the first question, initially, when I read the question before doing the reading, my gut reaction was social intelligence is definitely a weakness of mine, because the way I perceive social intelligence is that it deals with people who are charismatic, people who know how to work a room, and people who can navigate social interactions with ease. However, the book had a slightly different definition of social intelligence that kind of changed my original answer to this question. See, the book defines social intelligence as a process of discarding what it calls a naive perspective, which is when we project our feelings onto others, especially authority figures, and become either overly fearful or adoring rather than trying to find out what truly motivates them. So the book defines social intelligence as the act of discarding this naive perspective and instead adopting one that moves past idolizing or demonizing people and instead seeks to empathize and observe others and look outwards. Now, I definitely understood what the naive perspective was because I instantly thought of an internship that I did this summer at a law office of a pool attorney for the public defender's office. And initially, I thought that public defenders I had this very noble perception of public defenders, and they're fighting for justice for those who are wrongly accused, and they strongly believe in their clients, and yada, yada, yada. It was very idealistic. Now, my first few encounters at the office, and this is not to slam the office itself, revealed that A, sometimes your client is not always innocent. B, sometimes you don't really believe your client, and you know that they're lying, and you know they're probably going to go to jail. But 3, it is your duty, and it is their constitutional right to have an attorney. So you are that attorney, and you are the mouthpiece for your client, whether you know they're blatantly lying and they're blatantly guilty or not. You're there to cast shadow of doubt to the prosecutor. And this is a very cut and dry approach, but it completely shattered my idealistic perception of what public defenders were. So initially I thought, whoa, here's this person that I idolized, and seeing the way they dealt with clients behind the scenes and realizing that sometimes they really don't care. Sometimes they know the client is lying, the clients are bugging them, and just seeing the underbelly of it all made me, for a few moments, think, wow, this is like a really bad public defender's office or something, or wow, he's just very crass or insensitive. But rather, when I stepped back and put myself in his shoes, and looked outwards instead of inwards, which is what the book talks about, I realized through a discussion that he had with another public defender that his kind of attitude towards his clients behind the scenes is sort of, well, fine, you don't take the plea deal, you go to jail, that has nothing to do with me kind of thing, wasn't insensitivity, but rather a way of coping with the harsh realities that he faces on a day-to-day basis. Because, as he was telling another public defender, if you get so wrapped up in the fact that, wow, you have a really good plea deal, but instead you choose to maintain your innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against you and the lies that you've been telling, and you know you're going to end up spending 10 years in jail rather than 4 months at a woman's prison, that if you dwelled on that reality, you would probably go insane or become very depressed seeing some of the choices that your client was making. But rather, when you take a step back and say, well, you know what, that's my client, I'm just here to do a duty, like, even that's not really being passive, which is my first impression. It's rather a way of coping with the harsh circumstances that you deal with. So I'm in the process of trying to cast off that naive perspective, as the book suggests. the book suggests one of the ways you can do this is to cast off your internal dialogue and become more attuned to tone and body language that demonstrate the underlying motives behind people's actions, which sounded uniquely enough like the other book that we read earlier this summer, The Untethered Soul, which also advised that from time to time we shut down our internal dialogue. Well, that's the one component of social intelligence that the book mentioned, which is specific knowledge of human nature, and that's the part of social intelligence that I think I'm pretty good at. That's why I changed my answer. I think it's a strength that I have, the ability to be attuned to these unspoken cues that indicate people's true underlying motives. However, the second part of social intelligence that the book talks about is knowledge of general human nature. And the book outlines 7 deadly realities that include envy, conformism, rigidity, self-obsessiveness, laziness, flightiness, and passive aggression. However, this part of the book kind of dissatisfied me because it relied on far too many generalizations, such as one example being, if people are too nice to you in the beginning stages of your friendship and they're overly nice, then they're probably envious of you. Thus, to remedy this, use self-deprecating humor, point out your own flaws and insecurities, and ascribe some of your successes to good luck to make them feel more comfortable. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What if people are just really friendly and that's, maybe they don't have any underlying insecurities or envious of you. They're just friendly people. And why should I have to downplay my insecurities even if you are envious? Downplay my successes and highlight my insecurities. That's your problem that you're envious. That's not, especially if I'm humble already to begin with, then why should I beat myself up in order for you to not be envious? So this whole section, I didn't, and it was a repeated pattern when it discussed each of the 7 deadly realities. I kind of took with a dose of salt, I guess you would say. However, what the section that came after about strategies for acquiring social intelligence, such as speaking through your work, crafting the appropriate persona, seeing yourself as others see you, and not taking people who are fools too seriously. All of that I found extremely useful, so I focused a lot more on that section. Now, the second part of the question about the mentor-protege relationship and how, my social intelligence impacts my coachability. I think that unlike what the book says, that there is a sort of skepticism towards authority that is ingrained in our modern culture, I don't think I usually display that skepticism. In fact, I think I tend to go in the opposite direction, and with the whole naive perception that it talked about with social intelligence, I feel like I tend to elevate authority figures so highly that when they do things such as the example I just shared with my boss, when they do things that I find are reprehensible or shatter my idealistic perception of them, I tend to become very cynical, and then I say, well, they're not a true authority figure because XYZ, and I'm just going to follow my own path. It doesn't stem from a skepticism at their authority. It stems from rather my shattered idealistic expectations of who they were because I elevate authority figures so much. And so that impacts my coachability because it's almost like, okay, does that mean I can't make any mistakes or anything that you perceive to be mistakes in order for me to be respected as your mentor? So that's something that I need to work on. And I think one way I can work on that is by doing what the book says and trying to understand the motivations behind their actions. I found that this book was loaded with many amazing tips for not only how to procure an effective mentor-protege relationship, but also how to maintain and keep an established, successful, effective mentor-protege relationship. And I strongly wish that I had read this my freshman year, because I kind of felt a bit lost when it came to how to acquire mentors, even though it was something that I had heard repeatedly. I'm like, okay, how does one do that? But this is almost like a step-by-step guide, and I loved it. I'm definitely going to try to employ some of the strategies that they suggest, both in my mentor-mentee relationships for the Frederick Douglass scholarship, and also in trying to establish faculty mentors on campus at American University. Another thing that impacts my coachability is that I'm very hesitant to receive sharp criticism, sharp, realistic criticism, because I view it as, if you can say something, there's always a nice way to say it, and you can be realistic without trying to cut somebody down. And so I often view sharp criticism as rather insults, and that's something I definitely need to work on, because the book says those are the kind of mentors you should be seeking, and those are the type of mentors that you should be like, I want you, those people who can be extremely blunt, and basically tell it like how it is. So becoming more receptive to this type of criticism is something that I need to work on to improve my coachability. Okay, I've gone way over my time, but yeah, that was my blog post. Hope you enjoyed it.